Hey everyone, Aaron Spears here, young adult librarian at the Westlake Porter Public Library. This is the third video we've done now in our Teen Writers Group series. So the idea is we do these bi-weekly meetings live on Zoom for young writers in grades 7 through 12 to get together in a, supportive, collaborative environment. And then the writing prompts and other activities that we do within that group, we're converting into these videos so that if you can't make it to the actual live events on Zoom when they happen, you can still participate by watching these videos, doing the writing prompts, doing the exercises, and then you just jump in whenever you want to in the writers group. So what we were doing through the month of September and October was building up to National Novel Writing Month, which is in November. And the 4 times we met in those time slots, which are these videos, go through generating ideas, creating characters, and now we're up to constructing strong, engaging plots that are going to keep your readers turning every page. What's next? That kind of thing. So in this particular one, we're going to jump in with some exercises about plots, how they work. And then that way, once we get to November and it's National Novel Writing Month, you hit the ground running, you got all the prep work done, and you just write, lock away that inner editor and just write for the month of November. Check out westlakelibrary.org. We have we have several activities for writers during National Novel Writing Month that should be pretty fun and also encourage you to keep writing. So with that said, let's jump into the plots for today. So constructing plots is actually, since we're 3 stages in now, we did generating ideas, constructing characters. We're getting a lot of kind of plot ideas come to mind as we were planning so far. So we're going to keep that going, but with some very plot-specific writing prompts and activities today. But before we jump into that, I wanted to go over a thing that I think is really helpful. Christopher Booker has a book you can request through the library as well, called 7 Basic Plots. And he goes over these archetypical plots that he's arguing that all stories fall into. Now, these are not mutually exclusive by any means. You're going to notice some overlap between this plot idea, this plot, that plot. So plot number 2 that he talks about overlaps with plot 5, and that gives you, book X or whatever. So these aren't completely separate things. You're welcome to combine them. You're welcome to, use them exclusively. However you want to put them together, whatever fits best for your story. So we're going to go over the 7 basic plots as Christopher Booker lays out real quick, and then we're going to jump into some writing prompts. So the first plot that Mr. Booker talks about is overcoming the monster. So the idea behind overcoming the monster is the protagonist sets out to defeat an antagonistic force, often evil, which threatens the protagonist and or the protagonist's homeland. Usually the decisive fight occurs in the monster's lair, and usually the hero has some sort of a magic weapon at his or her disposal. Sometimes they pick up that weapon along the way on their journey. Sometimes the monster is guarding a treasure or holding a character captive, which the hero escapes with in the end of the story. Ideas like this would be like classics like Beowulf. Star Wars, to a certain extent, falls into this particular category. Plot number 2 is the rags to riches story. So this is one where the protagonist usually seems quite commonplace, possibly poor, downtrodden, and or miserable, but has the potential. There's potential there for greatness. The story shows how he or she manages to fulfill their potential and become someone of wealth, importance, success, happiness, etc. Now, there's also twists you can put on this where maybe, they learn a lesson at the end riches weren't that important, and there's a fall from grace and a return to a better version of the way that they started off the story. Ideas like this is baked into a ton of Disney stuff over the years, like the Disney interpretation of Cinderella, of Aladdin. If you want to go back more for classics, you've got Great Expectations. David Copperfield kind of works in this. A Little Princess works in this way as well. You can also reverse this as well. You could do a riches to rags story. So obviously it'd be, the opposite of that would be true. Somebody who starts off with, opulence, decadence, affluent, upbringing, very rich lifestyle, learns the value of people or other people around them rather than just placing value solely in like money and possessions and worldly goods. The third one is the quest. Now, in the quest, the protagonist and companion set out to acquire an important object or to get to a faraway location. They face temptations, other obstacles along the way, often brought about by the antagonist that they're facing. So one variation on this basic plot would include stories where the object being sought does not bring the happiness they thought it would. So like, it doesn't necessarily mean that the quest is in vain, although it may feel in vain towards the end of the story. By the final end, it'll be like, oh, but the quest, the journey was worthwhile, even if the object, even if the thing that was sought does not entirely bring happiness. So this one, first thing that comes to mind to me, then this one would be like a Lord of the Rings. If you want to go with juvenile fiction, you could do like Percy Jackson, the Lightning Thief. Most all of the Percy Jackson series is like that as well. Up next, the number 4 is Voyage and Return. This one is where the protagonist travels to a strange land that at first seems, obviously strange, but it's also enchanting. It's also maybe full of wonder. It's intriguing. It's piquing the curiosity and interest of the protagonist. Eventually, the hero comes to feel threatened and trapped in this world and must make a thrilling escape back to the safety of their homeworld. The protagonist usually learns and grows as a result of his or her adventure here, gaining invaluable life experience. This one, let's just stick with Tolkien a second. The Hobbit. The Hobbit fits into this category, but also some classics in the world of fantasy and adventure fit in here too. You've got Alice in Wonderland. I mean, you can go way back to like even very, very young readers. It's Goldilocks and the Three Bears is this kind of story. The Time Machine, H.G. Wells classic, that fits into this category. It's a very classic structure used in a lot of folklore and mythology as well. Up next, actually the next two are very complementary to each other, and picture any lessons you've learned in maybe your ELA or literature classes about Shakespeare. You've got comedy and you've got tragedy. So we're going to start with comedy at first. Now, comedy isn't necessarily like slapstick, laugh out loud, fall down comedy sort of thing. What this means in a literature and in a story writing sense is that it's a light and humorous character or characters with a happy or cheerful ending. This is also, it can still be a dramatic work in which the central motif, though, is the triumph over adverse circumstances, resulting in successful or a happy conclusion. And it can be funny throughout, but it isn't necessarily that it's like a laugh a page kind of thing going on here. Comedy is more than just humor. It refers to a pattern in your story where the conflict becomes more and more and more confusing, but is at last made plain in a single clarifying event by the end of that there. Again, sticking with Shakespeare, you've got Midsummer Night's Dream, you've got Much Ado About Nothing. Man, I'm really going back to my high school English now. Twelfth Night fits into this really well. This is also, you could think of this also as you're building a conflict pattern, as we just mentioned, that's more and more confusing. This is your classic like mistaken identity kind of stories as well. And then there's like a payoff in the end where what I mean by a single clarifying event is as confusing and as madcap and as nutty and as confusing as it may be as you build this like overlapping, hilarious, or dramatic with some moments of hilarity story, is that by the end you're like, the audience has that aha kind of feeling at the end. So then the opposite of this one, or the yin and yang, the yang to the comedy yin in this case, is tragedy. So the protagonist character flaw or great mistake, which leads to their undoing. Their unfortunate end evokes pity at their folly and the fall of a fundamentally good character. Tragedy is a story in which the story goal is not achieved. Outcome in this case equals failure of the goal, and the hero does not resolve his or her inner conflict happily. Again, sticking with the Shakespeare example, because that's what's in my brain right now. You've got Macbeth in this case. You've got Julius Caesar kind of falls that category. I think probably the most famous one we can think of, we can all say it together, Romeo and Juliet. This is a tragedy story in which the outcome equals failure, and they does not end happily for anyone involved, specifically the main two title characters. The seventh and final one we're looking at is Rebirth. So Rebirth stories show a hero who falls under the shadow of dark power or is trapped in a living death of some sort by a villain, by the antagonist. Things may seem to go well at first until the villain exerts full control over the hero. Darkness seems to have won, but the hero is freed, usually by another character's loving act, whether that's an actual like love interest or just a friend, a loving act by a friend to save the day. This is the story like Christmas Carol is a perfect example of this one. Secret Garden kind of falls into this category. Beauty and the Beast, to a certain extent, falls into this sort of category. So once again, keep in mind that these 7 basic plots that we were talking about, they can be standalone. They are not mutually exclusive, though. You could have overlap. You could have like a rebirth story that also includes like a quest story as well. So overlap them as needed, see what works with your story idea that you have right now, and maybe it falls directly into one of those. And then if you really like parts of another one, just like borrow that part from comedy, borrow that part from the quest, borrow that part from rebirth, and put together the plot that you like the best. And also, if you do find one plot, I've found this kind of handy as a writing exercise before. If you find one that completely seems like that would never work with a story idea I have, try it out. Like, just kind of sketch it out for 5 minutes. Again, as you've noticed on previous videos, I'm a fan of timers. Set a timer for 5 minutes and, try to apply one of these story or one of these plot ideas or one of these plot archetypes to your story, the one that you think doesn't fit at all, and you never know what you're going to get out of that. So on to our first writing prompt for today. What we want to do is, since we're going to be diving in and constructing the overall beat by beat moments of our plot, we're going to do one called Imagine, Organize, and Repeat. So with 5 minutes on the clock, we're going to do a brainstorming exercise here where not everything that we're going to come up with here is probably going to be used necessarily, but it's going to keep your brain moving. And for 5 minutes, you're going to collect all the ideas for scenes that you have, end, beginning, middle, whatever. You just want them out in list form. Write out a little bit, maybe circle it, maybe make just, drawings all over your page. Just let your brain go crazy. Some of this is going to be scenes that you have already come up with when we were doing our constructing characters and generating plot ideas in our 2 previous videos or 2 previous writer sessions if you were with us live on Zoom. We came up with some plot ideas. So this is you're gathering all those together for the purposes of this video. We're just going to keep it to 5 minutes. If you want to, pause this, give it 10 minutes, give it 30 minutes, whatever. For the point of this, so we want to get a basic plot structure going, and then we're going to slowly expand it out through the course of this video. So for 5 minutes, try to come up with 12 to 15 different scene ideas. A scene where your character has a setback, a scene where your character experiences joy, where they find love, they discover a new food. Walk through your story idea that you have from our first meeting, from our first recording, as if it were your character, and just write down everything that comes to your mind along the way, walking through that basic story idea. You want to ask yourself questions like the who, what, when, where, why, how, that sort of thing, and help fill out your scenes. And this is mainly like the title of your scene. You don't want to be writing out a whole lot of details to the scene just yet. You want to just get a good solid list going. 5 minutes, try to get up to about 12 to 15 or so, and then we'll have another prompt after that's all done. All right, so now we're gonna take the story ideas that we got, that we all wrote down, we've got it in list form, and we're gonna try to get these in a basic order. So like we said, we've got the brainstorming done, and now we're gonna get these in an order, kind of bullet point order, and we're just gonna build out from there as we keep going through our writing prompts today. The goal here is you want to construct a chronological timeline of the events that happen in your story. Even if you end up using flashbacks or dream sequences or whatever, we're just putting it in chronological order to have a basic template going that can be rearranged. Again, all this is fluid. We're just getting all of our ideas down on paper or on a screen if you're typing, whatever, and be able to like kind of see the overall structure of your story. So 2 minutes, get these in order, beginning, middle, and end. So I find this to be a really good exercise. Obviously, that's why we're including it, because it's something you can turn to several times over multiple days, multiple times, whatever. 5 minutes is obviously kind of a short timer to try to generate plots, or sorry, to generate all the scenes for your plot. But it at least gives us something to work with as we work through this video here. So again, be a big fan of timers. Set it for, give yourself like a 10-minute timer. Look at just like Act 1. Look at just Act 2. Look at just the end of the thing. So you have structured your time to kind of keep you on task with timers and generate as many story as you can. And then just focus in. Like, okay, well, I know this is going to be my opening. All right, 10 minutes. What are the scenes I need for this opening? And then you start building your plot that way, which is what we're about to do. So now that we have some scenes and we have a little bit of a structure going, we're going to expand on that, and we're going to keep going, keep going, keep going. And the next thing we're going to do is something called the plot dot. So the plot dot, now that we have a few scenes and a little bit of an idea about our beginning, middle, and end, roughly, this is from a book that Derek Murphy put out called The Plot Dot. It's an approach to getting our first solid outline of it. So this is an image that he has in the book that very well illustrates what we mean in this plot dot scenario. It's basically, think of it like a clock. You're going to start off at noon in the ordinary world. Your character starts with a lack of something. Then you have an inciting incident. You have a first plot point, a first pinch point. Down by 6 o'clock, you've got your midpoint, second pinch point, second plot point, final battle. So a quick word before we do our writing prompt here, just so we make sure the terminology is making sense to everybody. The definition of a plot point is the point at which your story is set in a new direction. Your protagonist is sent off on their quest and the adventure officially begins. Before you can do that, though, you need to set up what they're leaving. So you do need a little bit. Now, this isn't going to be like half your book or anything. We'll get into ratios later on. You need your setting up the ordinary world that your character is in. That's why Derek mentions like having a lack of something. So you have a slice of life for your character, but something's missing, something that they need, something that they maybe don't realize they need, but the reader is going to go, oh, they're missing this. Oh, they clearly want this. Your plot point when that hits is the point of no return at which the start. It's the point of no return at the start and at a point of will they make it by the time you get to the end, because there's a plot point 1 and a plot point 2. The other definition we want to make sure we're aware of it before we start doing this brainstorming exercise is the pinch point. So it's not quite as dramatic as the plot points are. The pinch points are like little nudges that you're going to give your story to kind of, keep kind of like re-upping the drama by, kicking in a little bit more either obstacles for your character or little successes for your character, however you want to do it in your story. So it can be a reminder of the power of your antagonist, so that would be detrimental to your protagonist, some kind of battle possibly or a struggle that's faced by your protagonist. It's a reminder of the challenges being faced by your protagonist. It ups the stakes a little bit as we're going, and it keeps your reader interested. So what we're going to do for this writing prompt is we're going to work our way around that clock of all of the dot plots, and we're going to do 2 minutes at each stop. And what you want to do is brainstorm and write down as much information as you can. I'm going to put up slides on screen instead of the timer, but the slides are going to last for 2 minutes each. That way, if you get stuck, you can look up and see what some of the bullet points and the prompts are at each stop going around that clock. Keep in mind, though, here, these are not individual scenes that you're writing. You're going to have like several ideas in each one of these. So keep it going. You want more than enough information brainstormed here. So just keep it flowing, keep it flowing. And each one of these prompts then also is designed to give you a list of elements that you want to include at each spot. So you'll see that as we go. So it's 2 minutes each. We're going to have the slides up on screen for you. And by the time we get to the end of this, you're going to have a fairly fleshed out outline that's going to be pretty manageable, and then we're going to work into a 3-act structure afterwards. So up first, we have the ordinary world. This is where your character is starting out. So your character wants to start with a lack. You want to show your protagonist and their normal life, including friends, family, job, school, if any of that applies. What flaws does your character have? What's missing from their life? What do they want more than anything else in the world? Up next is the inciting incident. This is your call to adventure. Something big changes. Maybe a stranger moves into town, a family member dies, a magic door appears, there's an earthquake. This kicks your story into action. This isn't the plot point just yet, but it's the thing that would really grab your reader's attention. Be like, wait, what's going on here? So what is this that happens? What's the incident that like opens up a new world for your character? How does your protagonist react? Do they accept this call to adventure right away? Do they try to ignore and deny what's happening to keep everything quote unquote normal? Does it take a friend, a side character to really kick them into gear and insist that they have to go? What compels them to heed this call to adventure? Next up, we're at our first plot point. So, again, this is the point of no return. Your protagonist may have tried to avoid the call, but now things are getting more intense and they're forced to make a choice to join the action. This kicks your plot into gear. What does the situation, or how does this situation escalate? What forces your protagonist to choose to go on this adventure? How do they feel about it? Up next is the first pinch point. So again, the pinch point, this is the first battle. Your protagonist has been meeting people, learning new things, discovering new dangers, there's building tension. This is the first major interaction, potentially, with the antagonist in some form or another. Maybe this is when they find out who the antagonist is. Maybe this is when they get a book of folklore or local history, or some characters like, oh, you've never heard of so-and-so? This is the introduction. This ups the stakes a little bit here. So what is it that actually happens? What will happen if your protagonist fails to defeat this challenge by the end of the story? What are the stakes? This introduces another layer of dramatic stakes to your story. So what is your first pinch point? And what scenes go along with that? So as we're going around the clock, constructing this plot here, we're about the 6 o'clock point now. So this is the midpoint. This is when your protagonist shifts from victim to warrior mode. And this doesn't have to be literally. If you're setting something modern day and they're not actually a medieval warrior, that's fine. It's a mentality we're talking about here. It's a shift from victim to warrior. Your protagonist continues to face new challenges, but they're on the defense, mostly reacting, waiting, making things worse, usually because you're building tension here now. So something now happens to shift their perspective and spur them to take action, to stop reacting and start winning, or at least on the path to winning, no matter what that may take. What does your protagonist try when they're on the defense? What shifts them into the offense? What new plans do they make? So we're past the midpoint in the story now. We're on to the second pinch point. So this is the second battle. Could be an actual battle, could be a metaphor. Your protagonist has their second confrontation with the antagonist, again in some form. They don't have to have a direct confrontation with it. It could just be a reminder that they're out there, or that the antagonist sends out more, hench characters to do something to the protagonist. Maybe their plans lead to this, or maybe it was an attack that they just now have to respond to. This second conflict leads to things being much, much worse than they were before. So what is it that actually happens? What builds up to it happening? What's the actual event that happens? What does your protagonist try to do in response to this? And how do things get worse? This is also potentially when you're putting your character, your protagonist, on the path to the audience going, how are they going to get out of this one? All right, we are on to the second plot point. So this is going to be a huge jump in the dramatic stakes, and it mirrors your first plot point ideally. So this is what is referred to in the book as the dark night of the soul. What a great phrase. At this point, everything the protagonist feared could happen, has happened, or is happening. They've lost the battle, and there have been serious consequences. They may have lost a supporting character along the way so far. They feel terrible. They've given up all hope until something forces them to change their mind, to have a revelation of some sort about themselves, about the battle in front of them, about the antagonist in front of them. With this new knowledge, they rise up from the ashes. So what terrible things do you think have happened? What does your protagonist do? What revelation do they have? And what new plans do they make? So this is a lot here. So there's going to be a lot of different scenes you can come up around your second plot point. But this is what propels your protagonist into the final battle, the climax of the book. At this point, it's like all hope seems to be lost, but maybe we've got this one last try in us. Can we get through to the end here? We are at it. We are at the climax of your story, the final battle, triumph and knowledge. With the new knowledge, your protagonist goes to battle with the enemy, with the antagonist. There's a back and forth. Things seem to be very dark. Your protagonist is going to lose. This is that point where the audience is no longer like, how are they going to get through this? Oh my gosh. Now the audience is at the point of, no, they're cheering for your character. They feel they've identified with your character so strongly. They are actively cheering, like, no, they've got to do this. They're rooting for them. They cannot put this book down anymore. Like, this is too intense. This is the moment they've been waiting for. And then victory. What will that final conflict be? What will be the most exciting, tense, drama-filled part of your story? This is it. A good final battle is going to yield one more scene afterwards that your audience is definitely going to want to stick around for, and it gives them kind of a moment of breath to kind of breathe and maybe celebrate with this character that they're in love with, that they've identified with, they've been through this entire journey with. You get to return to the ordinary world with the audience and your main character and how they've changed. No matter what plot, no matter which one of the plots or what combination of plots you've got, your character returns to the world that they started. So you're almost back to that 12 o'clock position on the plot dot. Your protagonist returns home. They're changed. They see their old life in a brand new way. So how have things changed? How have they changed? Do they have an ordinary world to return to at the end of it? It's possible that it was destroyed along the way, and they return to it and they find out something horrible happened. What do they do? How do they feel? And at this point, will there be a sequel? Do you want to hint at more story to come at all? So that should give you a lot of story ideas, scene ideas for your story. Join us next time. We're going to be going over building the world. So we're going to take all of the characters that you've developed, the story that you've got, and all of the plot work we just did, working our way around that nine dot plot sheet, and we're going to construct that and build that into the world that is going to be where your characters live inside your story. Join us live on Zoom for that one, or just stay tuned, and at this point, just watch the next video where we're all talking about building worlds. So until next time, happy writing.